You mentioned a couple of things that you thought we needed to do. You mentioned speculation. I tend to agree. I disagree with the administration on this, who's tried to poo-poo that whole speculative issue. I think that is one of the issues that's at play here. And I agree with the strength of the dollar being an issue, and I do agree also that we ought to put pressure on OPEC. I agree with you, all those things. I would just add on to some of the things that you mentioned, and I also believe that we've got a short-term and long-term problem relative to supply. We've ascended ourselves in this country and said we're not going to go into ANWR, we're not going to go into the Outer Continental Shelf, and we know there are huge resources in both. And so that's part of the picture, and I think that is related to the speculation, because you'll have some folks that say, even if we drill in ANWR now, if Congress passed legislation saying we could drill in ANWR now, we're not going to see that oil for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years or whatever. And that certainly is true. We won't see that particular oil. That's why we should have passed this many years ago, which I've consistently voted to do, but we can't go back and undo that. But what we could do, I think it would affect the speculative nature of the problem, because it would show that we're serious, that we are going after that oil now, and I think you would see that reflected, because a barrel of oil went up from $58 to $135 in a year's time. You can't tell me that there isn't speculative factors involved in that. So I agree with all the points you made. I would just go a little bit beyond that and say we need to go after supply that we have available to us. And we need conservation, and we need alternative renewable sources, all that. It has to be a comprehensive plan. Anybody want to comment on that? Yes,
I certainly would like to comment on it. In defense of the speculators, they are able to leverage this concern that America can't solve its own problems anymore, and that we're sitting idly by while the Chinese and Indian other economies expand so rapidly. So I 100% agree with you that it's the psychology of the futures market that we need to attack, and that means looking like we're doing things and doing things. At least opening the debate on offshore drilling, talking about things like the monetary supply, opening up the oil reserves. These are things that the marketplace needs to know. We're not going to sit around and just be victimized by them.
Right. Thank you,
Chabot.
Yes,
if I might, for just a moment. Mr. Dow and I were talking about this very subject before the hearing. It's impossible, and I'm no expert on this either, but it's impossible for an intelligent person to get their mind and arms around the idea that this imbalance in supply and demand has moved from the condition it was in a year ago, when we had an imbalance too, to the condition it's allegedly in today, such as to produce a more than 100% increase in price of oil. It just doesn't make sense in basic economic terms. So this issue, again, no expert to me, this is one of the primary pressure points that could have short-term effects. And right now, our industry is going to change this pretty quickly before businesses simply say, I'm not going to lose more money. I will just fold up right now and go away.
Mrs. Sigerberg, I think you wanted to comment.
Yeah, oddly, one of our biggest customers bases is the petroleum industry. And in the last 4 to 5 years, the sales that we've done to China and India are something as crazy as the gas prices are today. And what we're seeing is above-ground storage tanks in China, for example, that are probably larger than anywhere in the world. Each individual tank, it's frightening to know how much petroleum product is in some of these tanks, millions and millions of gallons. And what I don't think I help the speculation, but all I know is our company is running as fast as we can to sell them products as they're building these new tanks. When those tanks are built, the oil that they plan on putting in those tanks isn't going to come here. They're going to get it. And so I think we have future shortages yet that we can't anticipate just by looking at the design and the activity that's happening both. And the same is happening in India. It's a couple years behind, but we're there in those refineries talking to those engineers. And we've never seen anything like what we're seeing, the growth there. And that oil's going to come out of our pockets one way or another.
Mr. Dow, I think you were trying to...
Yes, sir. I think you all hit it on the head. We've got to peel the onion in a 100 different ways, and we've got to get some significant commitment. There's no shortage of ideas. There's a shortage of leadership. This has been isolated to an airline-only issue by the media, and it's not an airline-only issue. It's a travel industry issue. It's a small business issue. It's an American freedom to travel issue. And if we don't elevate this to a critical crisis for America and take it beyond an airline fuel issue, we're going to have a problem.
Mr. Faberman?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that's why the airlines, all the airline associations and other groups have joined in supporting the Pump Act proposal that's out there. We think that's an important step. Also, a lot of the airlines are using more fuel-efficient aircraft that are using less fuel, and maybe one of the small, if there is a word benefit that goes with retiring aircraft, is that some of the other older aircraft will no longer be consuming fuel.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher, let me ask you a different question if I can. I think your concept and your business is very interesting, and you go to a number of cities. Cincinnati is not one of those cities right now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Let me just mention some reasons why I think it should be, and I'd like to talk to you about that.
Happy to consider it.
We have one of the best zoos, for example, in the country. We have the Cincinnati Reds, first professional baseball team, Cincinnati Bengals. We've got great symphony pops. We've got Kings Island, many really world-class museums, Tall Stacks, which is really unusual, where the riverboats literally come, and we have thousands and thousands and thousands of people come. Let me put in a plug also for the Delta Queen at this time, which is the last of her kind that we need to save. I'll continue to have that discussion with Mr. Oberstar, who we've battled on the floor, who I have great respect for, but on this issue we just differ. But in November, its exemption runs out, and that would be the end of the Delta Queen. We can't let that happen. I hope Congress doesn't. But we have, I think I mentioned Kings Island. We've got fine restaurants. We've got fine hotels. We've got great arts opportunities. We have the second largest Oktoberfest in the world after Munich. And at that Oktoberfest, among other things, we've had the greatest number of people doing the chicken dance at the same time in the entire world as well, and we're proud of that, of course. And but it's really one of the largest fireworks displays at Riverfest that we have in the world. So it's a great place for families to come. It's very convenient. Populations from all over the place. So how could Cincinnati become one of the cities that your company would bring folks to?
You know, how this works is we're invited to a city by the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And we don't ask anybody for any money, but we do need a promotion organization to help support bringing more people. So we look at the number of leisure travelers, we look at the attractions, we assess the deal. We haven't heard from Cincinnati for quite a while. They initially talked to us, but then there was Newport across the street there, and there was a conflict between those two bureaus. And so we kind of backed away, because you really do need one promotional entity that's there and help promote this thing.
Okay.
And the real thing about City Pass is it helps extend length of stay and put more heads in beds is what it does. But could I take just one moment, because here's something you can do. There's a Travel Promotion Act that many of you may know about that's on the table right now, and it's sponsored by a majority of the House and almost a majority of the Senate. That's something that you can do right away that will really help you and help Cincinnati and every one of these cities. We're the only country in the world that does not promote itself. The only one. France does it, Australia does it, Canada does it. I mean, are we so arrogant to think that we don't have to do that? It'd be like a politician saying, I don't have to promote myself. I'm just going to get reelected. It doesn't happen that way. Anyway, this exists, and it's not going to take any taxpayers' money if we can get this passed. And I really suggest you all look at it. Some of you are already sponsoring it, which is great. It's a small deal, but having more people come to our country, Australians come here and spend on the average of 22.5 days. They visit multiple cities. I can sell them a bunch of city passes.
Very good.